Oh, we are live. We're on. What's up, people? How are you doing? We fixed it. Don't worry. We don't need Steve here. We can. We're grown adults that know how to use technology. I think.
Not really. Clearly, based upon what I'm seeing so far out of this
You're
operation.
correct. You're correct. We're here. I'm gonna retweet this because we're on now. Let's welcome everybody here. How you guys doing? No Steve Cofield. As you can see, he is enjoying the Jersey Shore, Soren. He is, I think, putting in a shift at the Shore store. Working with Paulie D in the situation, getting some stuff done out there on the beach. So hopefully he's enjoying that.
No chance they let him roll
with them.
There's no chance he hangs with those guys.
Well, they're older gentlemen now, sir. I think they're. I don't think they're as selective as they used to be.
They're not as old as Steve. Let's be honest.
I don't know, man. I feel like situation is like. I don't know. Listen, I don't think you're keeping up on the New Jersey Shore episodes.
I am not. I thought that was only like 10 years ago.
Soren, Jersey Shore Family Reunion is a show right now.
Really?
Yeah, it's on Thursday nights. Thursday Shore Day, I think they call it. It's fun. It's a good time. Yeah, it's still on though. They were also in Las Vegas for last season, which was fun for sure.
Fun for you, sure.
Yeah, I didn't see them. They're out at Lake Las Vegas for those that are here, or if you don't, if you're not familiar with Vegas, it's like 35 minutes outside of town. Really nice little resort area that I'm sure was furious that the cast of Jersey Shore was staying, and I believe the Ritz-Carlton.
Really?
Yeah, it was a good experience for everyone. It's on MTV still. To the commenter there, Eddie. It's still on MTV. It's still on. It is awful. Terrible show. I wouldn't recommend it. I do like the old episodes, but no, I do not think Steve is actually doing that. I guess we got some stuff to get into here, but how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Adam. I'm excited. It's fantasy football season. That means what? Are we just 24? 24 would be what? Thursday, 48 Friday, and then another 12, like 60 hours away from me pissing you off by calling out some player that I clearly know.
Wait, is that this weekend?
Yeah, Saturday.
Oh, fuck. Okay, well, I'm ready. Clearly, I'm ready for this.
Saturday, and we're down a man. We gotta find another contestant.
Okay.
Because our buddy TJ Salmon had throw a little love out to my buddy TJ because he lost his brother. And,
oh man.
Yeah, and so it's been a rough week there. So we're thinking of them. Great family here in Kansas City and a good friend. And so he's going to have to bow out as he takes care of family business. But we're thinking about you, TJ, and his whole family. But yeah, so we'll find one more. But we go. See, that's the thing is in the league that Adam and I and Steve are in, we've been doing for years, and we usually do it out in Las Vegas for the last 2 years because of the goddamn pandemic. But we have a whole, like everyone who's in last year is automatically in if they want their spot. But we have all these people that have been in the past that we can now go through the Rolodex and say, hey, do you want in this year?
Sure.
And so we'll grab somebody from that mix. We got one person who's going to be joining us from a party, I think, in Denver.
Okay. Justin
Schultz will be in Denver at some kind of celebration of some sorts, but he is not going to miss the league. So we have that going, you know?
Okay. What on earth are you drinking?
That would be a Makers and Diet.
Okay. It looked very fancy. I don't know what's going on there.
It looked
like things in it. I mean, there was like things in it. I'm like, okay, it's just ice. It looked from that angle. I thought you had like dividers in there. I don't know what was going on.
No, that was at one point a 2014 World Series Cup.
Okay.
But it's now been washed so many times.
All right, that's fair.
I'm a sipper, as you pointed out from the gallery.
Cofield's back. Cofield's back.
Back. He doesn't have enough bandwidth. Cofield should just go away.
Well, I think he has to like call the comments and stuff up. So I feel like he now thinks that he has to do that, which he does. We can't call those up. We can't run videos or anything. So that's fine. We still see your comments and we can still talk about them. I actually was about to get very petty about fantasy football.
By the way, are you enjoying how just like random things are happening on the?
Yeah, he wanted to change the backdrop, so he's in there doing that. I want to get very petty about fantasy football, but I have two issues now. One, you just dropped like a death dedication, so it's like Casey Kasem. Like I'm going to go from that to
an upbeat record.
Complaining about fantasy football.
You go to an upbeat record after this. How many times do I have to tell you? Come out of a death dedication to an upbeat record. Right? Great Kasem losing it.
So here's what happened, just to change subjects. You sent Steve a text a while ago that said switch it to the other boxes, which you just meant 2 instead of 3, so that we were more normal.
This right here, because this is what he needs for the logos.
He just saw the text and thought that you meant he wanted the real backdrop, and so that's why he came back in here and did that, I think.
It's whatever. He's incompetent.
My other issue with complaining about fantasy football right now is that I forgot our draft was this weekend, and I don't want to give away things I'm looking at. But I did lose it temporarily on the air today because I had a draft the other day. I already had a draft. It did not go incredibly well. It's also one of those leagues. I have a couple leagues, like the baseball league me and Steve are in. I hate because I don't like the way the transactions are run. And it's a disaster every week. I'm like, why don't I have this guy? And then I have a guy and they take him off my route. It's a whole thing.
Right.
Like, I still can't figure it out. So, and this one, it's just straight standard league, and there's like no PPR, no bonuses, like no nothing. And I just can't figure out the secret to getting over the top in that league.
You're talking about the league you're in with me and Steve.
No. That one, I figured that out a little bit. I've done a lot better the last couple of years. It takes me a while to figure out the best.
Or did I beat you in the championship game? Did I snatch your heart?
I think I've been in like 3 of the last 4 championship games or something.
Okay, you've been better.
I've been better. Like it takes like once I figure out like a setting and a scoring and like all that stuff, like I figure out leagues, and it just takes a while sometimes.
Okay.
But no, in this league I did the other day, somebody took Darrell Henderson very early, and I did the draft the day he got hurt.
Right.
And the report was, he's fine. And I said, no, he's not. He's not fine. So I was like, I'm taking Xavier Jones. I can't fucking wait. I'm going to take him in the last round. This is going to be great. I don't even have to take another running back because I think he's actually going to play quite a bit. Like, I'm going to just load up on every other position, and I'm going to try to steal Xavier Jones to actually play for me at some point. And I was like, this is great. And then today on the air comes across.
Sony Michel.
The Rams have traded for Sony fucking Michel? Are we goddamn kidding?
But seriously, think about that from a real football perspective. He went number 31 overall, and he's now going for conditional 5th and 6th. Like from running backs. Like that's where fantasy football is like so wrong. Like there's so many things about fantasy football that are actually a very good parallel to what being a real NFL GM is like. But valuing the shit out of running backs is not one of them. No, definitely. It's the exact opposite in that regard. But also what that trade told me was that I actually had it right. Like I scouted that out right. It's so annoying. When you think you get something right, you're like, oh yeah, you can, by the way, make trades and ruin your whole plan for the I should have just taken Sony Michel. Nobody took him. Yeah. That's obnoxious. No doubt. I wanted to get your take on this because I think you guys have done this already, but I think it's a crazy, crazy topic in terms of college sports. We had the executive director of the Las Vegas Bowl on today, John Sassenti here in Vegas, who we've known forever. He's a big-time sports guy in Vegas and obviously plugged into the college football scene. And I just posed the question to him. I said, true or false, what we've seen in the last month is the beginning of the end of college sports as we know. I think it's yes. I think it's true. Okay. He said false. And what was his logic? And I love, the bowl guys are always the ones that are completely honest, 100% about the big picture of things because, we know the bowls have always been the most fair and equitable, part of the student athlete experience. So tell me, what was the reason? Well, I'll be fair that John's actually honest. I mean, on the record, if you're doing a newspaper story, he'll give you the standard bowl answers. But he's usually honest on the air with us, and he's usually honest off the record. And his point is essentially. So wait a minute, did you just say that you get the company line mumbo jumbo bullshit when you're writing, but on the radio, sure, that's where you get the real deal. He just gets a little looser, I think, he's having fun, he's having a good time, You who works in both mediums, I just want to point out that like the real answers come on the radio, not in
Sure.
in the newspaper. Okay, so
Well, because it's also it works both ways, right? Where you feel like when you're on the radio, you're just having a conversation, and it's not going to anybody, and nobody's going to know it. And when you're talking for the newspaper, you're like, oh, everybody's going to see this. I can tell you, I think more people hear it on the radio than see it in the newspaper. So maybe you should rethink that if you're in the profession. I think his reasoning is more, hey, listen, we're going to see major changes, but people love college sports, and you're going to have college sports in some form. And I guess my point is, yeah, of course, like, yeah, we know that. I just think, listen, it's going to be. I still think it's 64 teams that end up breaking away from everybody else, and they do their own thing. And so, yeah, it's going to be different. And the people that are fans of those schools are going to think it's even better. But you are going to have a lot of schools that are just on the outside looking in, and those are kind of what makes college sports great. Like, you're not going to have some of those schools in, say, the tournament anymore. You're going to have just every school that's in a major conference is in the tournament.
Yeah, so I was having this conversation today with Seth Emerson from The Athletic. I thought he wrote a really good piece there, and he said it basically his premise, and of course he had the SEC, the Paul Feinbaum cronies all over him, because he said the SEC overstepped its bounds, and what they did was bad for college athletics and could end up being a problem for them. And I really liked it because it got me thinking. I don't think he went as far. I took the baton and went further down the field. What I said, and he said over and over the piece, like, listen, because he's like, grabbing Texas and Oklahoma was premature. They didn't have to do it, and it blows up the Big 12. And he said, now listen, if the Pac-12 was going after these guys, and we find that out, we find credible news that he goes, then I apologize, I'm wrong, and they did what they had to do, right? Those two brands are available. I'm going to go somewhere, you go get them. He said, but right now there's no credible information that says that anybody else was making a play for Texas and Oklahoma. OU and Texas reached out to them and said, hey, we're ready to go. Looking, because just like you don't build a stadium in a week, you don't leave leagues 10 minutes before the television grant of rights is up, right? You start making those tectonic shifts earlier. And he said the problem is they could have waited because there was nowhere else for them to go. And now they've put the 12-team playoff in jeopardy of at least being delayed, and the money that would come with that. And he said, and the overall greater good of college football. And that's how he kept putting it, was the overall greater good of college football, which what
does the SEC care about that?
Right. Exactly. And that's the immediate response of SEC people. Like, what do we care as long as the SEC is good? And I would explain it this way. Why it may be the best thing ever for the SEC, but why potentially it may be a problem. If you go into New York City and you ask who the top 5 are in college football right now, they have no idea. They'd probably tell you Alabama. They'd say Clemson somewhere. But beyond that, beyond just a couple of teams that are in the playoffs, they have no idea about college football in New York City. They don't care. They don't care in Philadelphia. They don't care in Boston. They don't care in teams that are in towns that are dominated by professional sports, right? So you already have part of the country. Like, when you talk about this big economic machine that is college football, it's not completely tapped, right? They're leaving money and viewers on the table, right? Or off the table, or off to the side, because they're not penetrating New York and Philly and Boston and the Northeast, because they have moved on from college athletics. Because long ago, the schools up there de-emphasized the sport, even the ones that do play it, like Boston College in Boston, and the closest one in New York is Syracuse. There just isn't that kind of interest in it. So,
whoa, Rutgers.
Now listen, yeah, right, okay. So now I want just let that marinate, right? Let that soak in, and anyone who knows anybody in the Northeast knows I'm right. Right, that they're not like sweating, 8 Georgia against 13 Mississippi State, and how this sets up the potential for a Mississippi State-Alabama game if they can win. They don't care about that. They're not paying attention to that. First, acknowledge that there is a part of the country that doesn't care. Okay, can we agree with that?
Sure.
Okay, so that's revenue streams that are not realized, and they're never going to realize. They're not going to. And why is it? Because there isn't a team in their backyard. Now, college football people will tell you, it's like, well, they don't have a school because they didn't try, and we don't care. It's big where we are. That's great. Except if the SEC becomes everything that it is, it'll be the same thing that happened in NASCAR. And this is how I explained it today. So NASCAR was a Southeastern sport. It was big. It started blowing up. It expanded out to the Midwest, to the North, and it became a regional sport. But then they lost some of their fans in the Southeast because they weren't Southeast centric. And then everyone looked around and went, okay, we're not that into it. And now you have like this big phenomenon of Formula One racing, and people are taking their attention elsewhere. And now the SEC is kind of like its fan base is back to the Southeast, but they've got scorched earth with Southeastern fans that feel like they were abandoned as it was their sport, and they liked that nobody else was into it, right? But then you also have all these fans that now are like, okay, we're just not into it because you're not focused as much outside. They've gone back to try to help out the Southeast. Think of it this way. If the SEC becomes everything and they constantly win, and the games played by Washington are irrelevant, why does Seattle care anymore about college football? If the entire Pac-12, which you can get excited about the brand USC, but USC's already been de-emphasized by the Rams and Chargers coming back to town. And if LA doesn't get interested in it, and if you move to the entire, granted, not big markets, but if Kansas City says, well, our teams don't play and they're never going to be in the playoff, we're not interested in it. If that permeates itself, all along the central corridor of things, Colorado, Denver, you start losing all those markets. You become a Southeastern regional sport. It's great that, yes, there are all those television sets, but it is still the casual fan. It is still the outside the SEC fan that makes it the juggernaut. Those games being must-see games for everybody around the country are what makes it the juggernaut. And if the teams in their backyards are irrelevant, if they become the Fordhams, who was one of the great college football powers back in the day, if they become Fordhams, then you don't get those television homes and you become simply the NWA, right? A regional TBS network. You become the Braves. You lose your impact on the national sports scene. So the idea that, well, what do we care? Well, that's great. USCC people can sit around and roll around in the dirt with each other and get all excited about it. But the revenues that you're talking about, yeah, it starts with your television sets, but it ends with the quantity of television sets that we'll watch nationally. If they go away, so does your big payday, and so does the relevance of college football as a whole.
So I've had a pretty, I guess what everybody has called a crazy theory. But I actually think the alliance that we saw with the other three power conferences, because the Big 12 is not a power conference anymore, the other three power conferences, I think they're trying to stop it. Like, I think it gives more credence to what I thought was going to happen, which is, I think the SEC, I'm giving the SEC more credit than you are, I guess. I think they know that. They know everything that you just said about if you are consolidating and you're making it just about you and it's regional and all those other things. I think they understand all that. I don't think the plan was to get Texas and Oklahoma. I think the plan was to get Texas, Oklahoma, Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, probably USC. I think the SEC has decided they are going to be college football, and they are going to get every single power possible, and they're going to just pull everybody away and just have a 30-team, 32-team, whatever,
right,
college football league, and they're going to pull all of them in. And then once if they got Clemson, Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, now you got USC probably is like, hey, please let us in. There's some other power schools with regional followings that are going to want in.
That's an interesting theory. Do you think it will happen?
Well, I think that the alliance helps kind of stop it. I think that was part of what the alliance was like. Whoa, hold on. We can't just let the SEC completely take over.
Well, first of all, the alliance seems to be run by three complete boobs, and is borderline incompetent, and was about the most farcical launch I've ever seen. It doesn't mean they can't recover. You'd have been better off just putting a press release out than having that asinine Zoom meeting they had. Was brutal. But to your point, I do think that's what it is. I think they're saying, listen, we're not giving up our culture of the Big Ten, right? Michigan and Ohio State do not want to head down there. And I think it's an interesting theory, but I don't think it's going to happen. And I think the alliance is about saying, hey, listen, we value all of college athletics and not just college football. And I think that's the thing is the SEC, they have great passion for the SEC, and I really do admire it, how much they are all about their league. It's an association with your school, but also that league. And I think that's great. And everybody else can bitch and moan about it, but it's envy, because I think everybody would like to have that kind of passion and pride in their league. Although for the 8 schools that aren't the big boys, it's really a pride in somebody else kicking your ass. But that's depends on how you want to view it. But I don't think the Big Ten is just all about college football. They are about academics. Their presidents do care about those kind of things, and they do care about the entire student body experience, which is more than just football. And I think that's true of the Pac-12, and I think it's true of most of the ACC. They may lose Clemson at some point. They may lose Florida State. But if they don't get them all, like your theory is interesting, but if you don't get Clemson, Florida State, Virginia Tech, whoever you want to call all the powers of college football, however far down you want to go, Michigan, Ohio State, USC, UCLA, Washington, take your pick on who all of those schools are to round it out to your 32 teams, to give you a great bracket set up and a great ability to have playoffs and whatever. If you don't get them all, you fail miserably.
Sure, but look at the pressure that would be on those schools. Like, okay, my whole family went to Michigan. I didn't went to UCLA, or UNLV, but I'm from there, and my family's all from there, and I do know that, like, if they were trying to say, hey, listen, we do care about football, but we also care about our academics and our other sports and everything else, the pressure from the alumni base and the fan base would be overwhelming to be like, get the fuck in this thing.
Only if you're the only one left out, right? The pressure is overwhelming. Was overwhelming for the quote orphan four or whatever it was back in the day, when it looked like at one point Texas Tech, OU, Oklahoma State, and who am I missing? Was it Texas Tech, or was A&M in that mix too? We're all going to go off to the Pac-12. Like the pressure was enormous for Missouri and for Kansas State and Iowa State, I think, to go find a home. Like, wait a minute, we do not want to be left out of the powers. But you have to be looking where you're like, we're the only ones left out. If you're sitting there and the pressure is, hey, Ohio State, you come be the first to come step in here from one of those other three leagues that are fine, they're solvent, they're making money, they have good, strong allegiances. The pressure is not enormous. You have a fine landing spot where you're sitting right now. You have to be able to strip everything down. That's why I say it's an all or nothing play. And unless you can get them all but one, you can't get the last one, right? They're not going to feel that pressure.
And I think the one, I think is if it's 2, 3, 4 that are like, are you going to stay with what you have? Or, there's 26 teams that are already committed to this. And you know what's going to happen. And by the way, the TV money, we already know the TV money's crazy. What would the TV money be if every week if Alabama, their schedule now is, we play Michigan week 1, Ohio State week 2, Clemson week 3? Like, what? This is nuts.
I don't know. If that were the case, then fighters would fight fights, right? And boxing wouldn't sit around getting a guy to 19-0 fighting nobodies so that they could then get the one pay-per-view payday, right? Like, there is a side of athletics that is not the NFL, which is like, let's bring our best against our best every week. They don't do it. Now, your rebuttal would be, well, that's more like MMA, which, guys can actually take a loss and they promote it. We're going a long way there, a stretch to make a point. But yes, it doesn't have to be you get everybody but one. You've got to get enough to where people think that where they sit right now is not the place to be. And as long as those leagues don't lose anybody, they have the safest, easiest landing spot and payday they can get, right? It's the safest and easiest. I'm not saying it's the biggest. Right now, the Big Ten's payday is bigger than the SEC's payday. So getting Ohio State and Michigan is an impossibility right now. And as long as you're going to go to a playoffs, that gives them entrance into the playoffs. And I think their point was like, hey, we see what they're going to do. I think everybody saw, and that's the point of Seth Emerson's piece where he said, Sankey sat next to Bob Bowlesby. Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC, sat next to Bob Bowlesby, the commissioner of the Big 12, and worked on and negotiated a 12-team playoff, all the while stabbing him in the back, stealing Oklahoma and Texas, right? And so they're going, look, they cannot be trusted. So if you're sitting there at Clemson or Florida State or in the ACC and they're like, hey, it's us too, man. We're going to carve this up. We're going to be here. Eventually the knife will turn on you. And I think that's what they figured out is the SEC is going to do what the SEC wants to do. So if you want to protect yourself, having good partners that you can trust is something that you should hold on to. And increasing those partners to where you don't need the SEC will make you even stronger. And I think if the SEC made a mistake, they played the hand too quickly because they needed to leave everybody in betting. They raised early with the nuts and unbeatable nuts, and they raised early and ran off a bunch of people when what they needed was to get the 12-team playoff officially in and then take Texas and Oklahoma, because now you've got resistance. Now it's at least going to be delayed because they're saying, wait a minute, we got to take a look at this. Now, how's this going to play out now with all these huge brands? There's a potential where you could say they're going to beat each other up, and where they might have been able to get 4 schools in, maybe now they're only going to be able to get 3 or 2, or maybe it's going to be harder for them to dominate. I think everybody's saying right now, like, let's put on the brakes. Let's look at this. Let's play out some scenarios. Let's see what it is. We don't have to rush in. And they definitely don't want the playoffs entirely in the hands of ESPN and the SEC. And that's the way it would be if they switch to the 12 team before the SEC contract is up. The ESPN the ESPN contract is up on the playoffs. If they switch to 12 teams before ESPN's contract is up, then ESPN will control the beginning of the playoffs during the 12 teams. And what they want is the 12 teams to launch with an open bidding war with other networks, their network partners, and have an opportunity to have more say. And I think the SEC rushed into this. If they could, and maybe not. Maybe once Oklahoma and Texas declared their intentions, they're like, it is a matter of time before it gets out there. And so we've just got to go with this. This is not ideal. We're eventually going to get the 12 team or some kind of expanded playoff, but we have to grab these guys while we can grab them in case they start looking around at the Big 10 or Pac-12. We have to make this happen. So, it is what it is. And I hope that we get a playoff with more teams that still has at least 4 power leagues and grants access to the other 2 leagues that I think are going to end up being powers in some form, the Mountain West and the AAC, whether they call it the Big 12, but it'll be a merging of all those 3 leagues into 2. As long as the top 6 leagues, which is what they announced was the top 6 conference champions would be automatics, with the top 4 getting the bye. And everybody went, well, it's just 4 out of the 5 power ones. That doesn't mean anything about the Mountain West, or, okay, great, they get one in, and probably the AAC gets one in. Well, now it looks like Mountain West and AAC almost every time, unless some other league can rise up, you're getting the 6 league champions in, and I think that'll still be a pretty good setup for college football.
Yeah, hopefully it goes. Well, I know you had mentioned, will the Pac-12 expand? I think it's clear they're going to.
Do you? Because they say this week they're going to announce it. Are you confident that they're going to do that?
Yes.
Where do they go?
The question is who? Well, I will tell you right now, in your area, if I was Kansas, I'd be begging the Pac-12 to come in. I think that they fit better in the Big Ten, but I just want it somewhere. I just want to go somewhere.
So what?
I know UNLV will be begging to get into the Pac-12. I'll tell you that right now.
San Diego State will. Boise State will.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What credibility did you hear the comments of Dave Wanstead on the Score in Chicago?
No.
Really? Okay, so interesting. This was a big thing. We played it on our station. All our shows played it over the last 24 hours. I think we were the first ones to play it yesterday afternoon. And I think he actually said it yesterday morning on the Score in Chicago. And Dave Wanstead said he was in a production meeting in Arizona for Fox. And I should get that. Should have had the cut and brought it. But he said, we're in a production meeting, and he said, what's going to happen is Oklahoma State and Kansas State are going to the Pac-12. That's done.
Okay.
He said West Virginia to the ACC, and Iowa State and Kansas to the Big Ten. He said what it looks like is Kansas and Iowa State, they would go to the Big Ten, and this is happening. Right? So in some ways he said what it looks like, and in other ways he said this is happening. I know on the K-State, Oklahoma State to the Pac-12, he said this is done. Was he standing around in the hallway and it was just speculation, and because he's not really that into it, he's like, oh, okay, this is done. All right. And for him, it's all about the NFL, and the college football thing's just a check, and he's not really wired into what it is. And so now he's on the air in Chicago saying this is going to happen. I don't know. It kind of felt that way. I don't think anybody here is going, okay, K-State, let's start figuring out the travel plans to LA and Seattle and all that. But it was of note that he was in a Fox production meeting, and this is where he came away from. So my response to you, so if you think it's going to expand, if they're going to have a scheduling alliance, which they said will take place in time, don't they all have to be at the same number? Like, if you're going to have a scheduling alliance, you don't want some crap where you've got 12 in the Pac-12 and 14 in the Big Ten and 14 in the ACC. And they said 41 schools are part of the alliance. That means Notre Dame's in it, whether they're going to join a league or not, but they're part of that conversation. If you're going to have a scheduling alliance, you don't want 2 Big Ten teams to have no Pac-12 teams to play, right? You don't want 2 ACC teams to have no Pac-12 teams to play. To me, if you're going to have a scheduling alliance, you got to all get to an equal number. And that equal number would seem to be to target 16. So right. If we work from that, who are the 2 ACCs, who are the 2 Big Tens, and who are the 4 Pac-12s? It means there's 8 openings. Who gets what?
Well, I don't, first of all, maybe the Big Ten just doesn't care. I wouldn't let Iowa State into the Big Ten. Just from an academic standpoint. Enough with that place. Don't let them in. That drags everyone down. But all those things, all those moves make sense. And if that move happened, and Kansas to the Big Ten does make sense, and all of a sudden all these schools are going in other directions, West Virginia's going to the ACC, then yeah, I think those schools that you mentioned have to be at least talking to the Pac-12 saying, please let us in. And then I think San Diego State is probably above UNLV in the pecking order. If I'm UNLV.
Wait a minute, because I want to check, because I'm not. Is Iowa State an AAU member?
I thought Iowa State was not.
Okay.
Because I know they're outside the top 100.
Yeah, they're not. Now that's the part that I don't know that I buy on their front. No, there they are. Iowa State University.
They are?
See a full list of AAU memberships. I'm looking at the logos of the ones that are on the front page of that. University of, hang on. There's Iowa. Here it says public universities. Yeah, there it is. Iowa State, since 1958.
Okay. All right, they're in. Well, I still think it's a crappy school, but
and Kansas in 1909.
Kansas was because I know I've been really trolling some of my Kansas friends, saying like, get to know Tulsa and UTEP. I've been really turning it on that, but yeah, I think Kansas for sure will be in the Big Ten. I think that just makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think there's going to be expansion everywhere. And if I was UNLV, I would be leveraging Las Vegas and Allegiant Stadium against everything.
Right.
Like everyone wants that stadium. Everyone wants this market. Like, okay, well, if you want it, yes. Everyone out here, sure.
Yeah, in Las Vegas.
No, the Pac-12 has every single championship here because it's the best place to have it.
That's
everyone wants to
point.
Come here.
Then if you're there, but they already have it without having UNLV.
No, that's what I'm saying. You're not getting it anymore unless UNLV's in. Now, here's the problem.
You think actually the city of Las Vegas would make that play? I don't. They're not turning down money.
I think they could, except for one key issue. The Pac-12 just hired a new commissioner. He was an executive at MGM.
Okay.
I think that's why they did it. We want to secure this relationship. We don't want any shenanigans with, Vegas and the arena and the stadiums, and we want T-Mobile and we want Allegiant and we want all these places. So we're getting the MGM guy. So those things can't happen anymore. So yeah, they're we don't really have leverage. There's nothing. And yeah, the market is great, but they're going to be able to keep the market. And it's probably in the Pac-12's interest to keep UNLV out of any of this and be a lower tier school so that then you've got the market completely cornered in Vegas. There's no real college sports here. Right.
I want to point something out. Rutgers and Maryland are both AAU schools. So the last two additions to the Big Ten were AAU schools. Penn State is not. That was the addition before that, right? Oh, yeah. There they are. Pennsylvania State University, 1958.
Yeah, I thought all schools in the Big Ten were.
Except Nebraska fell out. They were when they were invited, but they fell out after.
Beat it, Nebraska.
Kind of like their football program. They were Big Ten caliber, and then they fell out.
Although Martinez is still there, and he's only a junior. It's the most shocking thing I've ever heard. It's crazy.
It is crazy. So, all right. So, do you now think Iowa State and Kansas are the next two teams at the Big Ten? Let's start.
Kansas, I think for sure. Okay. Iowa State, I think there's debate. I know they're basically the ACC, but if I was the Big Ten, I would be really pushing Notre Dame.
If they invited Notre Dame and Notre Dame said no.
No, I know. But I would
whatever reason. I think one of the major reasons is most of their alumni is on the Northeast, and so the ACC is better for them to reach their alumni.
Sure.
I still wouldn't count them out from ending up there. And Notre Dame is not an AAU institution. It's not a research university. It's but I'm not seeing Notre Dame on this list. So from that standpoint, I went here at the end of the privates. New York Northwestern, no Notre Dame. So, from that standpoint, if I think they would take Notre Dame if given the opportunity. I think to me, if there's a problem with the alliance, it's that they didn't freeze out Notre Dame, or they worried Notre Dame would go to the SEC. There is no way Notre Dame is going to go rub elbows in Starkville, Mississippi. None. I've been through Starkville, Mississippi. and Notre Dame people are not going there. Okay, it's not going to happen.
Well, they'll be in the SEC North with Michigan and Ohio State.
Yeah, right. In your grand theory,
yeah.
So I think the one mistake is allowing Notre Dame to keep going along, and if those three leagues are going to team up, they could say Notre Dame pick a league and let's go. If you're going to be in, let's go. Like you can't be the Texas. Like they are now the Texas of what all the Big 12 schools dealt with Texas and having their own, network and just saying, okay, we'll deal with you, having the financial advantage, allowing Notre Dame to have NBC as its own bullshit. Like the rest of them need to call out and say no.
Well, let me localize it for the Western viewers. Notre Dame is the BYU of the East, and BYU wanted all of their own rules in the Mountain West, and then they're like, "Oh, this network sucks." It was your fucking network. What are you talking about? Everything was done for you. Yeah, the network sucks. You created it. The fuck out of here. Like BYU is the worst, and then no Sundays, and we got to change. Like the West Coast Conference tournament has to play Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Monday. So you can't play Sunday in case BYU's in the. Like, it's all obnoxious. So yeah, they are. I don't know that Notre Dame has a Sarah Kamard. That's Lee Kamard from BYU, who's now in the NBA. His wife was a real problem at the Mountain West tournament a couple of years. And
really?
So she is like public enemy number one in Vegas. So we're getting some Sarah Kamard comments in the chat. So yeah.
I know that Notre Dame is obligated if they join a conference right now, it has to be the ACC. But if they're rewriting the rules on everything, anything goes. Right. I mean, you pay a penalty and you can get out of anything. So I think if the Big Ten really wanted it and Notre Dame really wanted that, I think it could happen. But to that point, but I do think that, okay, so let's you and I line it up. Kansas and Iowa State, they look like Big Ten schools.
Sure. We'll go with the Wannstedt realignment plan.
And Iowa State is playing good football, right? Like if Scott Frost doesn't win and win big and Nebraska doesn't go say, Matt Campbell, here's $8 million a year, then they probably should consider dropping Nebraska because they don't know what a coach looks like if they can't figure that out. But anyway, so if they did that, so who does the ACC get? Is West Virginia is the obvious regional one. So do you go down that road and it's West Virginia?
Yeah, West Virginia would be the first one for sure.
Not a lot of television sets, but plays good football on a regular basis.
They have a fan base.
And doesn't hurt their basketball league.
No. It's fine on both.
Well, who else?
But honestly, you can't really judge who's playing well now.
I agree with you, but they all do.
I know.
They all do. They all look at it like TCU. I was like, when TCU came in, they're like, oh, I got to get TCU into the Big 12. And I'm like, they're a one-coach school really now. Like, I mean, yes, Doak Walker was there. If you want to get excited about what happened in the 1950s, congratulations. But, they weren't much before Gary Patterson got there. They haven't been near the entity that they were in the Mountain West, which is one of the reasons why I tell KU and K-State people, like, ending up in the Mountain West for the AAC is not the worst thing in the world because you have been, for Kansas and football, you've been nothing. And you'd have a chance to maybe build yourself into what TCU was in the Mountain West, what Boise State has been. That's a much easier path to being a top 10 team than it is fighting your way through the Big 10 or the Pac-12 or the SEC. But they don't want to hear that. They want to be a part of the league, which is fine. So who's the other one that goes with West Virginia? Is it Central Florida and all their television sets?
No, that would make some sense.
Is it Connecticut? Or
Cincinnati?
Once you went down the road of Louisville, then city schools are in play. Which Central Florida is. Basically, it's Orlando's college.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati certainly is.
Yeah. Memphis?
One of those two, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Memphis, maybe?
Yeah.
One of those three?
And then,
But it's not Oklahoma State, right? Because that's the strongest football brand that's not currently signed up somewhere. That or Kansas State, but I would say Oklahoma State's been better of late.
I'm trying to look through some of the... Yeah.
Central Florida, Cincinnati, Memphis are the big three that you would want to grab from quality of program and having some kind of market share that would come with them. South Florida, because it's in Tampa. And if they wanted to, strengthen their position in Florida, and they went South Florida and Central Florida and left West Virginia, maybe. But I don't think you're going to take a brand like West Virginia away. I think there's more brand there for West Virginia than there is Central Florida and South Florida. And I think if you polled the students at Central Florida and South Florida who their favorite team is and where their allegiance is, it would probably be 60% Florida,
Yeah.
30% Florida State, and 10% Miami. Something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I think there is a little bit of a commuter school aspect to it. So I wanted to get those off the board to say, then what are the 4 that the Pac-12 goes after? What are the best 4 schools for the Pac-12?
Well, I mean, I think they would try to get Baylor.
There's no way a Baptist university is going to be a part of the most liberal.
Well, where are they going to go? They have to go somewhere.
They are left for the AAC or the Mountain West. There's no way the Pac-12 is going to do business with a Baptist university. None. Zero. The Big 12 didn't even like doing business with them at times.
Well, I still think the Pac-12 could bring BYU. So if you bring BYU, you got to counter with Baylor. Get the dueling religions going.
There is no way that BYU is going to be a part of the Pac-12. None. Okay. Zero.
All right. Well, where's BYU going? Are they getting left out of everything?
They're getting left out.
Okay. I'm that's the happiest I'm going to be with anything. I'm very glad about that one. I mean, well, San Diego State, I think, is a logical Pac-12.
It is, unless you say that everybody in San Diego is already a USC or UCLA fan, and San Diego State doesn't really move the needle, which I don't think is the case. I think the Aztecs do pretty good in San Diego. I think the Aztecs are by far the strongest option for the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Of the Mountain West schools, they're number 1. And then UNLV and Boise are 2 and 3 in some order. UNLV because of its market, not because of its ability to compete.
Sure.
And Boise.
Well, they'd be better if they were in the Pac-12. They'd get better players.
And I think those are the only 3 schools that you consider. I think you consider TCU and Baylor out of the Big 12, but I think ultimately they're not going to take private religious institutions. TCU is not nearly as wrapped in the church as BYU is, so I wouldn't fall out of my chair if TCU is taken. I will fall out of my chair if Baylor ends up in the Pac-12. I will fall out of my chair if that happens. So then you get to who?
Well, I know that people in the Mountain West believe, and it doesn't make sense from a market perspective, but there is a ton of money at Colorado State.
Okay.
And they have great facilities now. They have invested so much money, and there is some history of success. And it'd be a natural rival, obviously, for Colorado.
Yeah, I don't think they want the natural rival. They want television sets in states they're not already in.
Yeah,
I don't think Colorado State.
I think that's the plan, but at the same time, I think you do have to make sure that you want markets, but some markets don't care about their team.
Right. So to me, the 2 obvious ones, the first 2 obvious ones for the Pac-12 is they wanted to get into Texas, and Texas Tech is still there. It's not their ideal fit. It's not the number 1 school, but I've been told in Dallas, the order of school interest goes Texas 1, A&M 2, Texas Tech 3, and around 5 or 6 or 7 is TCU and SMU. Right? They're like OU is probably 3, Texas Tech is 4, 5 is Oklahoma State, and then probably 6 is TCU and Baylor and SMU, and 6, 7, 8. They're below all those schools. So I think Texas Tech and Oklahoma State are the 2 obvious. I think that's 13 and 14. It gets you into an area that you want to be. Now, it gets difficult to travel. So do you travel partner with them? Is it K-State, which I think is the next best football brand? But it comes with virtually, it has penetration into Kansas City, but Kansas City is more a KU town than it is a K-State town.
You're ruling out Kansas, right? If the Pac-12 moves first, is there any chance they could get Kansas to just come
Well,
in?
that's what I think the Pac-12 should be doing. When they say they're going to decide on expansion in 2 days, they should be inviting Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, Kansas, and then whether is it K-State, is it UNLV, is it San Diego State, is it Boise? But they should be inviting their 4 first, because that's what the Big 12. That's where they shit themselves, was when they lost, the Nebraska and Colorado, they sat around going, "Oh, it's less mouths to feed." I'm like, you need to get your numbers up because if you lose any more defections, it's going to be trouble. And while they sat there with their thumb in their ass, the ACC came and took Louisville, which to me was an obvious target for the Big 12. If they were going to go into the Eastern time zone, they needed to go get after Louisville immediately. And you know who stopped that? Texas. I mean,
well, by the way, if you're going to try to make inroads in Texas and you want to market, why not Houston?
I think it's a valuable commodity, and I think it's probably the next one to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it only has penetration in the city of Houston.
It's the fourth largest city, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Texas A&M is still, it's Texas A&M, Texas, probably 50-50 or 40-40, and Houston 20%. It's the third biggest school as far as relevance goes in the city of Houston.
But I mean, I think we also, like we said earlier, you can't just base it on what they do right now. Like if the football team is down, oh, they were great for 30 years. They're down the last two. We're not going to take them. Like you think they're going to be cyclical. But what I'm saying is if Houston is in the Pac-12 and they're a major university and playing major schools every week, I think that somewhat changes. I think there's probably people that are changeable among those fans of other schools.
All boats rise with the tide. How is Maryland and Rutgers doing in the Big Ten?
Rutgers is starting to play better.
They're starting to what? Not shit on their own shoes. Like
they finally got a good coach in basketball. I think football is going to be better too. They're getting there.
Yeah. So listen, I agree that they can get better. I will tell you that I really think that a league that has, if the Mountain West said, okay, we're going to 16, and they're at 11 right now, right?
Yeah.
Like the Mountain West should be proactive. Like they're going to Oklahoma State and all the old Big 12 schools are going to be checking their options on the bigger leagues first. But if they went for Houston, and I know you don't want to deal with BYU, but if they went for Houston and BYU and TCU and, all the leagues all the schools that look like they grab the best schools that don't look like they're going to land in one of the Big Four, then that would be an awesome football conference that can be better than the Pac-12.
Yeah, and to the Houston doesn't draw 40,000 at home games. Yeah, they're playing SMU in Temple,
right?
In South Florida. They're not playing UCLA and Washington and Stanford every like that's different.
But I will say to that point, and who made that point because I saw that as well. Throw credit to what is it? Heath Radio. To that point, TCU is playing. That I went down to TCU, Texas, and it was not the end-all, be-all. They played the day before the Chiefs played the Cowboys in Dallas, and so we went over to the TCU Texas game, and that's as big as it gets right now. Granted, Texas wasn't number 3 in the country for that game, and this was Alex Smith's last year starting, so it was 2017. But there were seats to be had. In a beautiful building that holds 40-some thousand, but like TCU, that's where I'm telling you, like everyone thinks like, oh, you're in Dallas and it's great. And TCU as an example is to that point is they're not A&M. They don't, while they may have alumni, a lot of those alumni are A&M fans first.
By the way, TCU,
UMKC graduates a lot of people, and they are not rooting for the Roos over Kansas or Missouri or K-State. They are still fans of those schools first.
Little known fact, Soren. TCU, one of my 5 finalists when I was deciding on a school.
Really? What were the 5, Adam?
UNLV.
Okay.
TCU.
Okay.
Michigan.
Okay.
Stanford.
Okay.
And Penn.
Really?
Yeah.
And UNLV won out.
It's in Vegas.
Yeah. So, and you were living in Vegas at the time.
I was.
And that's what chose that. So, were you accepted to all 5?
Yeah.
So, which it should be known, Adam's a bright guy, and I have no doubt. Your brother was.
I was in high school. I was smart. Yeah.
Yeah. That's impressive. Yeah. And chose UNLV.
My brother's jersey back there. He went to Yale.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I only applied to 3 schools.
Okay.
Syracuse, Purdue, and USC.
Okay. I get USC. How did Purdue get in the mix?
Why do you get USC? I grew up in Kansas City. Why does USC make sense, but Purdue doesn't?
It's in LA.
I had several criteria. One, it had to be to where you couldn't drive home for the weekend.
Okay.
Right? Because I grew up just me and my mom, and we talked about it. We agreed I needed to go away from school and experience a different deal. So I didn't apply to any of the local schools. So that was number one. I wanted quality college athletics, right, to root for after I got out. So they had to have a good football or basketball team and a major power. Because like I looked at schools like Rensselaer, because like Purdue was there because of engineering. I was going to go to Syracuse for broadcasting, Purdue for engineering, and I'd looked at like Rensselaer, which has a good hockey team. But it's a polytechnical institute. So Caltech actually offered me scholarship money to play football. I had the worst football program ever, and I hadn't played football in like 2 or 3 years, and they still offered because I had a good math score on my SAT. But so I looked at a whole bunch of schools, but in the end, I only applied to those 3. And USC was if I couldn't figure out broadcasting or engineering. They were pretty good in both, and so USC was on the list as well.
Not bad. TCU was never on my list until I went to my sophomore and junior year of high school. I went to the Mountain West Conference, or it was the WAC tournament at the time. And the dance team is the most attractive girls I've ever seen in my life. Every single year. Sitting
at a indoor-outdoor bar having dinner before the TCU-Texas game and seeing the co-eds headed up in their jersey and what appeared to be just a jersey and cowboy boots was something that would attract somebody to going to college there.
Sure. I was like, okay. And I looked at the campus looks beautiful. I saw, looked at brochures and everything before I applied. I was like, all right, I'm in.
It's kind of weird in the sense that they have their own, kind of like if you've ever been on USC's campus and it's every building is built with the same red brick. They've done the same thing at TCU with this yellow brick. And so it's kind of like some people are like, oh, it's so amazing. Look at the symmetry and all that. And I'm kind of like, yeah, or it's kind of an army barracks. Like, I was not blown away by the TCU campus. So I think you did all right choosing UNLV.
Surprisingly enough, the brochures made it look amazing. And I have been there. It's fine. It's not great. It's not as good as I thought it was before I applied there. And to Brady's question, didn't realize they were out of your league, or you just assumed even the uglies were going to be hot too? Yeah, I was like, yes, the average girl here is going to be like a 10. It's going to be ridiculous. So yeah, that was my thought process as a dumb high school kid, or smart but dumb. Yeah. Dude, yes. To Brady's point, yeah, Arizona State. I don't know if you've ever been to Arizona State campus.
I may have spent quite a bit of time on the Arizona State campus at one point.
Yeah, I mean that's not even school. Like, how would you even go to class at that point?
Listen, I got a nephew that was looking at Arizona State, and I told his parents, too fast. Do not send him there.
Well, and then, I mean, not only have I seen how fun it is there and have partied there many times since college, I also saw the I can't remember the name of the movie now, but the kid that was fixing games at Arizona State.
Yeah, that's my buddy was in on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
that's great.
Benny Stillman. You're talking about Benny Stillman. He's the one guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say he was the main guy in the movie.
Yeah, he's from Chicago.
Right.
Yeah.
The movie's amazing.
That's another part of the story. I said, listen, I had a buddy there. I had multiple reasons why I went down to Arizona State, but a buddy of mine was there, and I said, and he ended up fixing college basketball games and sitting in the FBI's office interrogating himself.
Was it Steven Hedrick Smith?
Steven Smith and Isaac Burton.
God, I have a great side story from that, and I don't know if
I have a great one where I knew about the games and couldn't get anything down because nobody was taking the action because everybody and their brother knew. And then it didn't become public for more than 2 or 3 years later, even though the Pac-12 knew. They deny it, but they knew while the last game was being fixed.
It was Big Shot, Confessions of a Campus Bookie. That was the movie. I love the movie. It's cheesy as hell, but I love it.
Yeah.
I wish I had Justin here to ask if I could say it this way. Could I say that I was told a story and I don't know if it's completely true? Is that legally get me off of it?
Probably not the way you phrased it now.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I probably shouldn't say it. That's fine. We've talked a lot of college. I do want to get some NFL talk in. Of course, neither one of us wants to give away any of our fantasy strategy for Saturday.
I'll give away anything you want. What do you want to know?
Oh, who are you taking?
See, I'm not like you where I
Who are
got these
you
guys I
focused
gotta have. They're all commodities to me. I Billy Bean it, right? It's all based upon value. There's
No,
no
no,
one
I,
to have.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't go into the draft thinking I want this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy.
But as
What
it
I do,
unfolds, there's like, okay, this is the best value on the board.
right? I'm like, all right, this guy is not going to cost that much, and that's the guy I have to have because that's the guy that fits my lineup, and I'm going to be able to spend this much money on this guy because I know I can get this guy. Like that's how it goes, and that's when you really sell them.
Now, can you acknowledge as we sit here, and I think we're going to try to do a league again here on this, but can you now acknowledge that you there's no one you can sit there and say you're going to get because I'm going to ruin it for you.
Yeah, and I don't think that should be allowed. I mean, I would propose a rule, and it's going to get voted down because you'll just tell everybody to vote no. That, by the way, God, I wish we could go back to the old way. You remember the old way where it went around in a circle.
Yeah.
And you had to be in or out. And if you're out, you can't get back in.
Yes.
I would love to go back to that rule. And if you're out, you have to shut the fuck up.
One day, like we should do like if you win it, you make the rules.
Oh, boy.
If you win it, you get to make the rules.
Oh, boy. By the way, to Brady's point, I think I was kind of right on Antonio Gibson.
The reason I told you I already had him in my dynasty league. It wasn't like I just back-assed into it. I had drafted him in our dynasty league 5 weeks before during our draft. June.
I don't care. But so that people are clear on this, I don't care if you outbid me on somebody. I mean, I care. I get annoyed by it. That's not what I get mad about. What I get mad about is your running backs are, and not just you, other people. Steve does it too. You have no more. You can't bid on any more running backs, and you're out of money. And you're like, you got to bid on this fucking. You can't let him get him. His team would be too good if you get him. You can't do that. Don't let him get him.
Adam, take it as a compliment. We view you as a threat.
Sure, and that's fine. But I also feel like there's no you said you compared it to NFL general managers earlier. It's not like the Raiders we don't need a quarterback, but goddamn, we're gonna go call them and say you can't let them draft that quarterback. It doesn't happen.
It does happen. That's bullshit. All kinds of shady.
That's
shit
illegal.
it still happens. Why do you think anytime you see a team who's done and they trade back into the draft with a future pick, they have been on the phone with the agent of whoever? The Saints finally got busted because Sean Payton shot his mouth off on a radio interview about how, we heard so-and-so was going to sign this guy when he jumped back in and took the quarterback from Mississippi State a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He shot his mouth off. That's what nobody comes back into the draft unless they've cheated. They're already on the phone calling the guys like, if you don't get drafted, we're going to give you this much. And then the agent goes, they're taking us with their 7th round pick over here. It's not going to happen. And then they trade back in front of the team.
Right.
It's already told the guy, and they get it. So all that shady shit absolutely happens in the real NFL.
But
absolutely happens.
But if they're caught, what happens?
To this point, nothing's happened to the Saints, have they?
They get fined. Teams get fined for that.
Okay. I'll give you $10. I'll give you $10.
Okay.
That's about what the fines amount to in the NFL.
For every infraction. $10 per infraction.
$10 per player I screw you on. That's fine.
And then you're just paying for my league. By the way, Brady, I'm not saying that. But I already said one earlier that I already got burned on because they fucking traded for Sony Michel, which goddamn pisses me off. Have you declared any of the rookie quarterbacks busts yet? Like the caller did on FAN of Zach Wilson.
Zach Wilson will be the best rookie quarterback in the bunch.
But he's already a bust.
Oh, listen, there were guys on my radio station calling Patrick Mahomes a bust right after he was drafted.
Okay.
I mean, and there were people that agreed with the guy. Footwork's terrible. Name an air raid guy who's done anything. And I'm like, well, name an air raid guy who could actually throw a ball more than 22 miles an hour, right? There are all these Cliff Kingsbury, flip it, lollipop throwers. This kid has a rocket for an arm. This kid throws on the run. There was this perception that if you throw on the run, then you're undisciplined and you can't really complete those passes. You got lucky to do it. And we now see that that off-platform throws are the reality. And I said this at the time. I said, Peyton Manning one of the drills he did over and over again was like he couldn't run like Mahomes, certainly couldn't run like Lamar Jackson and Mike Vick and those guys, or Zach Wilson, frankly. Steve Young, there are white quarterbacks that can run and deal. But he had this drill where guys would come at him with brooms and they would shove him and he would practice throwing where his feet weren't set. Like mechanics and footwork is like, you know what footwork is? Footwork is a catchphrase for a jackass that doesn't really know what a quarterback looks like. Oh, it's footwork. It's footwork. Shove the footwork right in your ass because throwing off balance is something that is a necessity. It's something Peyton Manning practiced that where he's like, listen, I'm not going to run around, but I got to be able to shuffle my feet. And sometimes you can't get that foot down and you still got to be able to deliver the ball. And Mahomes is exceptional at that. And Zach Wilson, there are throws that Zach Wilson makes that are Mahomes-esque. He has arm strength. I would call him a diet Patrick Mahomes.
So I was wrong on Mahomes in that I thought he would be Jameis Winston. In that when he came out, I said, this guy is going to throw for 5,500 yards and 48 touchdowns and 32 interceptions.
So if he had landed with the Bucs, would he have been that? And if Jameis Winston had landed with Andy Reid, I don't think he would be what Patrick Mahomes is because Mahomes got the better arm. But how much of that do you give? The reason why I always had confidence was, one, Andy Reid tagged him. And Andy Reid didn't have a shot at Tim Couch, but he did have a shot at Achilles Smith, Cade McNown, Dante Culpepper, and he took Donovan McNabb, and I think history says he made the right choice. Right? So when Andy Reid's involved in the decision, my assumption is he'll make the right choice, and I know that no one will get better coaching playing for Andy Reid. If you're playing with Andy Reid, no one around you will have better coaching. So that's one of the reasons why I actually like Patrick Mahomes, and people who listen to my radio show know that year I had been chirping all about Mahomes. I'm like, listen, he's listed as a third rounder. You're probably going to have to take him in the second to get him. But I love this kid. He's a winner. He's got nothing around him, and he's carrying their asses uphill against all these teams. He never stops firing. He never quits. Like, I love the guy. And then as the draft started, we got done with the season. I'm like, the Chiefs going to have to use their first-round pick on him. He's creeping up there. I never dreamt they'd have to go trade up to 10 to get him, but he was always my guy. But couple that with, okay, I think this guy's really good. And then so does Andy Reid. Like, sign off on this, then you have something that to me is not going to lose. Zach Wilson doesn't have the Andy Reid seal of approval, but he is the guy who looks the most like Patrick Mahomes since Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't think Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes if the Jets take him.
Yeah, I don't, but I don't think he's 50 and 32. Right? Like there is an inherent ability and a competitive nature. Like he is. Look, Eric Bieniemy called him last year a competitive prick. And he goes, and I mean this with all the admiration in the world. And I'm telling you, he is. I used to interview him every week, and it's not a great interview, by the way, because he's so good at never giving up the team. But he is 100% all team, always about the guys. And then you see him with the guys, and you can tell like he's different around those guys. Like they respond to him. He is a total leader. He's one of the fellas. He's lifting weights with the guys. He's working out with the guys. He's having shots with the guys. Like, but then when it comes time to turn on the corporate side and be the pitch man and do State Farm, he can do all that as well. Like he's the ultimate package. But like there is a side of him. Like he did not come off the field when they played the Baltimore Ravens, and he was voted the fourth best player by NFL Network, and Lamar Jackson was voted number 1. And when he threw his second touchdown to go up 14-0, and he walked off the field and went, he was saying, I'm fourth? Really? And when he's beating the Bears, and Mitchell Trubisky went 2 and he went 10, and when he's in the process of smoking the Bears and he comes off the field and the camera catches him going, that is a guy, that's Michael Jordan. He is ruthless, competitive prick. And I don't know that anybody, like I can't tell you Zach Wilson has that in him or Trevor Lawrence or anybody else, but he is not going to lose. He's better at protecting the competitive nature than Michael Jordan because I think he watched Michael Jordan. And he had a dad that played in the big leagues and hung around the clubhouses and learned the way to do it. But like that fire along with that arm, and then he's a really smart guy, and then he's got Andy Reid. That's some shit you don't want to mess with.
And by the way, there's a difference between being like Michael Jordan because that's how you're built, and being like Michael Jordan because you watched Last Dance.
Yeah, he's built that way.
That's what I'm saying. But I think there's a lot of people now that are like, "Oh, I'm like Jordan." No, you don't get that because you watch a documentary and then you want to be like.
End of his rookie year, where he just played the Denver Bronco game and won with 20. He was one of 20 backups that started that game, and they beat the Denver Broncos, who were still a really good defensive team. And he beat them because the Chiefs were locked into where they were going to play. And that offseason, video emerges of him playing pickup basketball at one of the health clubs. And he is between the legs, spinning, going hard to the rim and, dealing on stockbrokers. And you're like, and it gets out and it goes viral around Kansas City. And I get Brett Veach on and he goes, all right, hey, first thing I want to say is we have seen the video and we've had the conversation with Patrick that he is not to be playing these basketball games. I go, so that got your attention? He goes, yeah, it got our attention. He said, listen, we told Patrick, you can't help yourself. And you're going to get into that game and you'd be like, no, we're just screwing around. I saw the video. You spun like 3 times, went between your legs to get to the rim and get a point. Like, you can't help yourself, and you're going to go all out in these games, and that's why you can't play these games. He is
Did you see the Myles Garrett basketball video?
No.
He went length of the floor, between the legs, awkward. Like, his dribbling wasn't great, but it's better than you would think for a guy his size. And then went up and dunked on somebody. I was like, dude, you're the defensive player of the year. What are you doing?
Yeah.
This is completely reckless. And he jumped with somebody who also jumped with him. I'm like, you're very likely to land on this guy's foot and break your ankle or something. Like, it's very possible that happens.
Yeah.
Knock it off.
Yeah.
Some guys are that's what they want to do.
So who is the best rookie in your mind? Call your shot.
Who will be the best one this year, or who will be the best one long term?
This rookie class, because this is a big class, right? Like, it may go the way of the Donovan McNabb 2000 or 2001 class, where like Tim Couch went 1 and Achilles Smith went 3 and K McNabb went 10, I think it was. All end up being turds. And Dante Culpepper has his 10 minutes of fame, and Donovan McNabb's a really good quarterback, and none of them make the Hall of Fame. That may be this class. Or some people think it might be 1983, where multiple guys are going to end up being stars. Who is the best one of the bunch?
I think they're mostly going to be good. I think Fields is the best one.
See, I think you've lost your mind. Okay. Like, I hear that over and over again. It's because people saw his shit at Ohio State. They're like, oh, he's really impressive. Name a guy under Urban Meyer, and I know that he finished under Ryan Day. Yeah. Name a guy coming out of that offense that went on to be a stud. And that's not to say, because the same thing was said about Patrick Mahomes and the air raid offense.
Sure.
But I think that offense does, and Urban Meyer and then to Ryan Day do a great job of maximizing your strengths and minimizing. There are not many reads in that offense. And that's where Patrick Mahomes, because I had on Seth Walder today, and he was one of the guys, ESPN wrote a piece where they basically had 12 categories for quarterbacks, and they ranked the top 10 in every category. And so we obviously focused on Patrick Mahomes. And one of them was, second option. Like, who has the best second option ability?
Well, by the way, that's what I was going to say. Is that's what I liked about Justin Fields. Is I thought when he was off schedule, he was very good. I liked when he was off schedule and he could do things and just make plays.
So, but how many times were the plays his legs?
Enough, but I thought he also I liked his arm.
I think
he threw the ball over.
I think he's new Lamar Jackson, right? I always say guys are diet something. I don't know how to call them when I think they're a better version of a guy. I think he runs when a guy runs all the time, like Patrick Mahomes evades to throw. And that's the thing is, like, you see him, he gets away and he extends plays and he'll run to go get a first down and move the chains. But if it's not third down, he's looking to get it on his arm and get the ball down the field. And I don't know that Fields says that. I think Fields evades and his first instinct is take off. And that to me says the upside is Alex Smith or Alex Smith with a better arm, which would be a better quarterback. But I think Zach Wilson has the ability to be a guy that makes all the throws. So I'll take Wilson against Fields.
Oh, I mean, I think I might have done it on the podcast, but you know why I'm anti-Wilson?
BYU.
No, well, it's not. I mean, it has something to do with it, but it also, and this is not. I mean, I do think there's something to this. It sounds ridiculous. Like, I thought on draft night he was terrified of hanging around black dudes. Go back and look at those photos in the video. He looked horrible. He was like looking around, like, what am I doing here? Are these guys going to rob me? Like, that's what he looked like. And I was like, you can't play in the NFL if that is how you. And again, I'm reading into it. He never said this. This is not a quote. Nothing.
Well, let's
but he looked so uncomfortable.
I think it's a great point. If you're right, yes, that will be a problem. I will grant you that. 100%, it'll be a titanic problem, right?
Right, yeah.
But
you think there's black dudes in the locker room in the NFL?
Right, but I will tell you where I missed the boat on Josh Allen is I was like, how can you have racist tweets and lead a football team ever?
He didn't have I hate Josh Allen. He didn't have racist tweets.
What did he? How would you describe them?
So this is an ongoing thing on our show.
Okay.
I think context is important to everyone. First of all, I'll get it clear. I do fucking despise Josh Allen. I'm not defending him for that.
Why? I interviewed him in Tahoe. I thought he was a nice enough guy.
Everyone I know says he's lovely. That's fine.
Is that right? Like, dude, is he considered an ass or not?
No, he's not.
Okay, so why?
And I'll say, you know, our friend out here who runs the Buffalo Pizza Shop, in Vegas, who is just, I mean, he is a unabashed, huge Buffalo Bills fan. He got a call a couple weeks ago. I don't even know if this is supposed to be public. It's fine. I don't care. He got a call a couple weeks ago from Josh Allen's girlfriend, and she's like, "We're in Vegas. We want pizza and wings. We heard you guys were the best. Can you deliver for Josh's birthday, or it's her birthday, Josh, whatever it was? Can you deliver for a birthday party?" And he was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Is this seriously like for Josh Allen? Like and she's like, "Yeah, but don't make a big deal of it, but yeah, he really wants to try your guys' stuff or whatever." And he was like, "Okay." He's like, but she could tell he was like nervous that it was Josh Allen. So when he went to deliver, Josh Allen actually came out of the hotel, came out to the street, and was like, "Yeah, I figured you probably want to meet me. Like, like keep it cool. Like, don't make a big deal, but I just wanted to thank you and everything." So like he said, he was like an amazing dude, loved him.
So what's your rub?
I hate more of the fans and how they treat him. Like it's like first of all, he's the only player on the team.
All right,
nobody else even exists.
I don't want to hear anymore.
Nobody else even exists.
It's your bullshit Tyrod Taylor thing. I don't want to hear anymore. The guy was top.
The Tyrod Taylor thing.
Let me say this real quick.
Yeah,
the guy was top shelf for us to deal with in Tahoe.
Yeah, that's all I've heard.
It's one thing when the mics go on, but I can tell you, like Marshall Faulk, pain in the ass. Don Cheadle, pain in the ass. Donald Trump, or now President Trump, before he was president, the time he was up there, when that was the Ben Roethlisberger, pain in the ass. Like there are people that are jerks, and they never get invited back, by the way, because American Century and NBC and Harris, they don't take any shit up there. So if you're an asshole, you don't get invited back. And none of those guys, they were all one and dones, right? Josh Allen, good dude, and like they'll show their true colors when the mic's not on and in dealing with people. And he was a good dude. So there's no reason to not like the guy.
Well, I don't like how the fans treat. I don't like all the N-words that came from the fans about, like, that's what I didn't like. That's why I'm not a fan of the team anymore.
Yeah, so, but don't you think some of that came from the tweet thing? Like what did he tweet? He
tweeted rap lyrics. And I've always said context is everything to me.
Agreed.
Like there's difference between quote, like if you see a guy in his car, right, and he's screaming the N-word because he's rapping along with the song that he's playing, is different than a guy screaming the N-word because he's mad at a driver that's in front of him that's a black dude. And when we don't accept that as two different things, that's a problem. So to me, like,
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, if you tweet out rap lyrics, I don't have a problem with it. Like,
but if I can be sitting here in Kansas City, fairly knowledgeable guy when it comes to sports, and I'm not aware of that till tonight, don't you think there are fans that are like, oh yeah, like the racist ones? And that's a reason to not like them, but not to like this, not to hold it against this guy. They're taking that and making him their champion because they like that word and they like using it. That's it's a mistake he made. Like, if you're going to be in the public eye, don't do that. Like, can we agree with that? Like, yes, once it's happened, how we evaluate it, we have to take context in hand. But once you're learned as to how the world works, you should not say that word when those lyrics come up. Correct? If he's driving in his car and he's rapping out with it, no one should be able to get a video on their phone of him blasting that out now, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. But he was well, I don't know why I'm defending Josh Allen right now. He was 15, and when you said if you think there's a possibility you're in the public eye, he was a backup at JV, and then his junior year was completing 43% of his passes as a high school.
I'm not holding him accountable. Like what you're telling me jibes with the guy that I sat and interviewed in time.
Sure. Yeah, and the racist stuff was unfair. I will say that. I think it was unfair. The fans are racist.
And I became aware of that when I watched him and Stefan Diggs do an interview early last year, and I'm like, Stefan Diggs is not just putting on a show. Like Stefan Diggs has an honest admiration for this guy. He's one of the guys in the locker room, and so that was the thing. And that's why if you're a team evaluating the guy, and you go in and you do things, because I know guys that are scouts in the NBA and the NFL, and some of them, the guys that look young, and they go into the bars and talk to the bar owners and different people, not just the coaching staff, and say, what's this guy like when he comes in here, what he's like. I think if you dug in, and the Bills I think did, you'd find out that, like, listen, it is just that. It was rap lyrics, and this guy's going to get along with his team fine, and the Bills made a great decision in what they did to draft him.
Did they? He had 2 terrible seasons and 1 great one.
No, listen, the story's yet to be told. If this was his Mark Rippon year this past year, then they should have clearly taken Patrick Mahomes when they held the 10th pick the year before. But if they got an all-pro corner and then came back and got a Pro Bowl quarterback that is going to take them and win, one championship, if they got, I'm trying to think of a quarterback decision. I can't come up with one, but if he goes on to win, 1 title and take him to, 16 playoffs, like, okay, they didn't get it right on Patrick Mahomes, but there were, as much as I loved him and as much as Brett Veach, the Chiefs general manager, who was the guy that was on him for 2 years, loved him, there were many people that said that there were warts there. If they passed on him, got an all-pro corner with the 10th pick and a safety that played well for them and maybe even made a Pro Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, with the picks they got, and then got him and he wins a championship for them eventually, like, he's the Akeem Olajuwon selection. Jordan would have been better, but you can't shit on getting 2 championships with Akeem Olajuwon, taking him 1. You can shit on Sam Bowie going 2, but you ain't shitting on Akeem Olajuwon going 1 over Jordan.
Well, the Bills weren't going to take Mahomes anyway. He was the wrong color. They needed a white quarterback. The fans needed it, so that's what they were going to do.
So Buffalo's a racist town.
That's what I've said. The reason I'm not a Bills fan is because I had to sit in the crowd and hear all the N-words thrown at Tyrod, who was leading them to the first playoff appearance in 20 years. And they treated him like shit. That's why I'm not a fan anymore. It was disgusting. And I've used Josh Allen as the scapegoat. It's not his fault that the fans are fucking pieces of shit racist. It's not his fault.
So then shit on the fans. Don't shit on Josh Allen.
I do. Well, I do because now he's their hero, and like he can do no wrong no matter what happens. Because
my enemy's hero is my enemy.
Sure. Brady, maybe they learned the N-word from reading his tweets. That's not fair. It's not fair to Josh Allen. I was actually going to bring up a story I talked about today. We don't have to do it, but I usually am able to find, like, and I think Steve appreciates or hates this, no matter how good the story is, I can find the negative.
He appreciates it. Trust me.
Yeah,
because I appreciate it. I think you're a psycho, and I love it.
I couldn't do it with the Brandon Belt story. Did you see Brandon Belt with his grandma died of COVID yesterday?
No.
And she was the one that used to like take him to Little League, and like she was the one that supported his career. And she died of COVID yesterday morning, and he was like devastated. He was just, I can't function. He's like, I got to get out of the lineup. And apparently his dad texted him, and he's like, she was your biggest fan. Why would you not play on the day she died? Like, you have to honor her. And he had gone 2 for his last 30. He was in a slump, just miserable. Went 4 for 5 with 2 home runs. That's a cool story.
That is cool.
I really wanted to find a negative, and I just couldn't. And I was like, God, am I getting soft? Like, I'm getting old. Because like the Urban Meyer story, I found negatives. The Urban Meyer Josh Allen story, not Josh Allen the quarterback, Josh Allen the Jaguars player.
Right.
I don't listen fully right away. Don't understand the world of breastfeeding and childbirth at all?
It is one that even when you live through it, it is still it is an awkward moment. There's no way around it.
So I don't know if you guys did this story or saw it, that Josh Allen's wife had their first child last week, and she and he had decided they only wanted to breastfeed the child. And the hospital, and I don't know if this is
those who don't have kids, is a very important decision for a family, and absolutely most important for the mother.
Sure. And the hospital told them no. Now, my first thought on that was, is there something wrong with the baby? Where the hospital's like, hey, the hospital said there was like nutrients that needed to be added, that they needed to get to the baby. In my mind, I'm like, well, clearly there's probably something wrong with the kid. I have no idea, no clue. I'm free.
It is. If you don't have kids, it is a much more challenging process than you would ever. I'm not gonna like.
Sure.
One child. I have two kids. One was much more challenging than the other when it came to that subject, and I'm going to tell you, it is a stressful pain in the ass. Like there is like I did not do anything with this story, but I have sympathy and experience with some of the frustrations that are there.
Sure.
They have breastfeeding coaches.
Oh, I saw it in The Office.
That are part of pediatricians.
It was an episode on The Office. It was a guy breastfeeding trainer, and Jim was like, "No, you're not gonna be the one that teaches my wife this." It was a great episode, but no, in my mind, I was like, "Well, maybe there's something wrong with the kid. That's why the hospital doesn't want to do it." I don't know what's going on here, but in the end, they wouldn't let Josh Allen and his wife just breastfeed the child. They wanted to do something else. So, according to Josh Allen, and again, we're talking about the Jaguars, Josh Allen, he had been told by Urban Meyer, hey, anything happens to you, anything goes wrong, anything happens, whatever's going down, I'm your first call. So he called Urban Meyer, who called the CEO of the hospital, who told the nurses he does what he wants. Great. Everybody was like, wow, Urban Meyer, great job. No, this is what happened to Urban Meyer as a college coach. Oh, Aaron Hernandez tried to kill 4 people on campus? Call Urban. Don't call the cops. Oh, there's attempted rapes all over the place? Call Urban. Don't call the cops.
So what did Urban do to solve the situation?
He called he called the CEO. The CEO called the nurses, and they took care of it. But what else? Yes, but what else is he doing? What else is he fixing for good? That's what I want to know.
Listen, it is. I think that's a fair reaction. I think it is a statement that Urban Meyer is at least invested and willing to answer the phone at whatever time for his players, right? Like sure. I interviewed again at Tahoe, right? Great. I've got a lot of great experiences from the American Century Championships in Tahoe. Urban Meyer was there the year at Ohio State, his last year at Ohio State, and he was literally hours in front of going to the Big Ten media days, and then the shitstorm happening with the assistant coach. And he was there with his son, and they were playing in the championship. And so they brought him around, and he said to me, he's like, I got 7 minutes. I said, okay, let's go. And so I started my phone stopwatch so he could see that I was going to keep him to 7 minutes. And I went through and I asked him football questions and went through it all. And I asked him one that was flattering. I said, listen, 20 years ago, they said no one could win north of the Mason-Dixon line, and no one had until you came to Ohio State. Was that wrong, or is Urban Meyer just that good? Right. So he loved that. And so when he gets done at 6:58, I'm like, thanks, coach. Appreciate it. Enjoy your weekend. And he's taking off the headset as I'm saying that. He sets it down and he goes, good questions. Right. Nice enough guy, but the ultimate manipulator.
Of course.
And I got 7 minutes. I'll do it because the American Century people, Harris, NBC, they want me to do this stuff with you guys to promote the tournament. So I'll do it, but I'm giving you 7 minutes, then we're gone. Now his son is standing right there. And he was like, he may never want to go back. He may never be back. Now that he's a Jags coach, if he wasn't an a-hole, then he'll be invited back. But I'm telling you, they do not invite back assholes. But, I get that he wants to get on with his son. He told me he had 7 minutes. I gave him 7 minutes. I respected his time. And he gave me a pretty good 7-minute interview. Right. But I think that that speaks to who he is. Control freak, priorities, focus on what he wants to do. No star players he's going to take care of. Maybe all players he's going to take care of because he's going to build a program. I mean, does that make him a bad guy?
If you're covering up crimes, yeah.
Okay, fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Yes. By the way,
that sounded good till you reminded me about Aaron Hernandez.
Yeah.
Did he cover up crime?
I mean, I guess we should say allegedly, but yeah, I mean, the stories are that Aaron Hernandez was completely out of control, and the cops would go to Urban Meyer. Like they'd be like, "Hey, this guy's out of control. Like, what's going on?" And 64 players got arrested while he's at Florida, or 64 arrests. 64 arrests. Some are multiple.
There's some Andy Reid. I was told 3-4 years ago by another scout. I got a couple guys in the league that are scouts, and I always run down the Chiefs picks and players to them. And their 80-man training camp roster, my buddy told me it was like 50-something. I don't know. I don't remember. It was 53 or 57 red flags. Like he went through, he goes, I tallied up their whole on what we had broken down. 50 some of them had a red flag. He said, now listen, some are like, guy had 26 parking tickets he never paid. So clearly there's a bit of prima donna in him. He said, not a violent crime, not an issue, but it goes down as a red flag. But now do other teams have 44? And so the Chiefs are a little bit ahead, or is there a team that only has 13 of their 80 guys in camp? They had 50 something that on this team's board had red flags. So that's the world that Andy Reid lives in. And I think that's the world. I think there's an element of like, you want to coach football, then you got to be able to coach guys that got issues. And if you think you're not, you just haven't dug deep enough on all your guys.
I would like to know if different teams have different thresholds for how many parking tickets is a problem. Like the Vikings are like 8 parking tickets, that's a problem for us. And the Chiefs are like 14 for us is an issue. And the Jets are like, 2. I think it's going to be 2. Oh, that was my other problem with Zach Wilson is he already was complaining about how many cars were in New Jersey and New York before he ever moved there. Like, bro, there's going to be people. Sorry, it's not Provo.
Yeah. Hey, I want to answer Brady's questions. What are your top 3 best people to interview all time?
Well, I mean, my favorite interviews are obviously local people that we have good relationships with. And, I've said I'll just give a local one here that, Nick Holden and John Merrill were 2 Golden Knights that I just love talking to almost every day. Ryan Reese, too, in the locker room. That were just great. Famous-wise, Ice Cube with us was ridiculously good.
I've heard Ice Cube came on our station with the Big 3. I didn't interview him. Josh Briscoe did, and it was a great interview. I thought Ice Cube was awesome.
He was awesome with us. He sat down with us, on set, sat down. We were on remote. He sat down with us. We kept him through like a 3rd segment. We were supposed to have him for 1, kept him through 3. And then he's like, I can keep going if you want. Like, okay, this is great. He was incredible. And then I'm sure you have a few. I'm just trying to think who.
I've got 2 for sure,
awesome.
and I'm running through names to find a 3rd in my head right now. So who'd you end up saying?
I said a couple of the Golden Knights, Reeves. Oh, you know what? I'll give another one just if we're staying a little bit local. And Steve loves this. He thinks it's hilarious. Like me and Incognito have really good talks when we can.
Okay.
Can't anymore, but he's as much bad things as he's done. He's a very interesting guy.
Nick Leckie, who played for the Rams, Saints, and Cardinals and was a K-State guy, is a friend, and I did a lot of shows with him. And he said Richie was a good guy. He played with Incognito with where would it have been? Rams? I guess Rams. And he said he was a good guy. He didn't have a problem with it. So that's interesting. Not to say that he didn't excuse everything he ever did, but he said, no, Richie's a good teammate. So I'll give you the 2 that are no doubters, that are 2 of the best interviews ever. Number 1, Jim Harbaugh.
Okay.
Not because you end up being palsy and everything goes on. The long pauses, you don't know what the answer is going to be. I think I've told you the story about the Runts and Grunts father-son basketball game where he made his kid play with a fever and talked about winning the championship T-shirt. And, I asked him about, was he going to take the KU job? And he didn't say, yes, I was going to take the KU job. But I said, the word was, you had the job. It was yours and you were coming and leaving Stanford. And then they said, if you coach the bowl game, you were out. He goes, can't be two places at once. And I give a commitment to my seniors. Like he confirmed, in my opinion, he confirmed he had the KU job. Like that was amazing. The fact that he would do that on the air. And I do think Jim Harbaugh is probably a misunderstood guy. And then he calls back when we have Kevin Harlan on, and he's talking with Kevin Harlan. He's talking about his brother-in-law here in town because he's got, who people don't know, his family, his wife's family is here in town. Great people, by the way, the Fearborns. And, was talking about his brother-in-law coaching a playoff basketball game, and he's flying in for the game. Jim Harbaugh is, it's like, for me, like I've always said, I think one of the things, and maybe you have this as well, like I don't have the filter where you feel nervous asking people certain things, right? I know what my job is and I'll do it. And I don't have that like, oh, I should not want to ask this guy this because it's uncomfortable. He doesn't want to ask it. I think it's one of the things I like to be good at what we do. You have to not be afraid to ask what has to be asked, what should be asked, what needs to be there. And so I don't have that filter. And so I don't get, so I think that's one of the things that helps you do good interviews. But then, and I don't have that filter like about what needs to be said, like it does not help it with my relationship with my wife to have a compass that points due north.
Right.
Like your compass should do this. You should adjust and find that, okay, I don't need this, like it shouldn't do this. Like, okay, I shouldn't say it, like, I just say it like this because like I'm like, no, this is right. And here it is. Right. That causes problems in a relationship. You need to be like, and my wife's always like, listen, you can't say that to them. I'm like, why? It's true. It's like, that's reality. No, you have to soften the blow. You have to lead up to it and do this and that. Right. And I don't have that. And Jim Harbaugh, and I think that makes for good radio. It makes it hard for for people to deal with me sometimes in normal social environments. Jim Harbaugh does it like whatever there's no filter. And it's awesome, right? It's awesome. So Jim Harbaugh, that's my number one favorite interview of all time. I've interviewed a lot of times Bob Huggins, and I still, whenever I call West Virginia, Bob Huggins always does the interview, and I've been interviewing him since I was back in Sports Fan when he was at Cincinnati. And Bob Huggins, long pauses, and like I remember asking him when he was at Cincinnati, hey, Coach, you got Temple again in the first round. A lot of people think you should have been seated higher. I mean, are you okay with the seating? He's like, oh, I think everybody should face Don Chaney 3 out of the last 5 years in the NCAA tournament. No, I don't think there's anything nefarious going on right there. No, I think absolutely it's just random luck of the draw, the way it is. Like I think Bob Huggins is fantastic. So those are the two guys I can absolutely nail. I recently had Frank Caliendo on. We call, and I've met Frank at the Super Bowl many times and talked to him. And we've got friends. Our buddy Chuck Powell used to do a podcast with him in Phoenix. Frank lives in Phoenix. And he's always been great. He's kind of a little different guy, like when you get him where he's not on and you realize he's a thoughtful guy and there's a lot of things going on up in that head besides just comedy. And so he had my number. I had his number from dealing with him at Super Bowl, and he'd be promoting something or promoting Fox or ESPN or whatever. And so he was coming to town this past week. And he shot me a DM and a text and an email, and he's like, hey, I'm coming, I like to promote the show. So we put him on Tuesday, and it went okay. I was on remote. There's a little bit of a delay. And so he made the delay funny, did a great job of making the interview, which could have been difficult funny. He's like, yeah, well, I'm not doing anything Thursday. So if you want to talk Thursday, let me know. Because he was actually up somewhere else. He's in Minneapolis doing a show on Tuesday, and he was doing Thursday. He's like, well, I'll be in town Thursday morning. If you want to do something, let me know. We're like, yeah, come on in. And he came in and we blocked out 20 minutes for him. And we ended up doing like 40 plus minutes, blowing through the top of the hour break. And he started talking about his dad and his relationship with his dad. And he's like, I don't have a great relationship with my dad. He's like, well, he goes, I don't have a bad relationship. He goes, I just don't have a great relationship. And he's like, well, here, let me read you the last text from my dad. He goes, my dad was a minor league baseball player. And he's like 79 years old. And he plays in these over 70 softball leagues. And he reads this text. He's like, yeah, Frankie, 2 for 4, turned a double play, a home run, drove in 5. Looking at picking up I'm bringing a couple of the guys from my Ohio tournament out to your show. And he's like, my dad will come to the show wearing a shirt that says Frank's dad. I go, oh, so he's a big supporter? He goes, no, he wants people to know.
Yeah.
I'm Frank's dad. Come talk to me. And like, it was like, it was a real view because comedians are a little bit off.
Oh yeah.
Right. And it was like a view into his world. That's my most recent. I'll make that my third one, my most recent favorite interview he's reading texts from his dad and talking about, what the relationship was like and why he's into sports. And then he talked about, being offered Saturday Night Live and not taking it because if you're like the president of NBC was pushing him to be on Saturday Night Live, he goes, if that happens, he goes, Jim Brewer, they shit all over Jim Brewer because Jim Brewer was shoved on him. If they don't find you, they don't really want you there.
Yeah.
And talking about a sitcom and walking away from it, it was amazing stuff. It was great. I loved it.
I was gonna throw like some random Dat Win was
that
so
Win
cool,
good?
and I had no idea. And I was like, wow, that guy was incredible. I love that guy. Just random things like that. Nate Oates, which I think was only good because
coach of Syracuse.
Sure.
That's my plan anyway.
I think the reason I think he was really good is because it was really weird, and Steve gets he plays a good bit when we do this, but there's certain college basketball teams that I get obsessed with every year because I'm in a college basketball fantasy league and I watch every game they play. So,
and you have thousands of dollars of action riding on all these different sides.
On every single game. So when we had Nate Oates on, I had just watched every game Buffalo had played that year, and I started randomly referencing man, that the start that you guys had against Northern Illinois, and he's like, that game wasn't even on TV. I'm like, yeah, I know, but I watch every game, and he's just he was blown away. And then he was so awesome with us. I think just because he was like, well, clearly this random person in Las Vegas cares about my program. This is weird. But he ended up being super cool. So I like that guy.
I saw Bill Self up there. Bill Self is a great interview if you can get him. I'll give a little, and I won't deny this. This isn't something I'll deny later, obviously, if I'm doing this. Bill Self is tape only for us.
Okay.
I will not book him live because he's not showing up for 20 minutes, and I'm not going to get stuck tap dancing 20 minutes of Kansas talk, hoping the phone rings.
Sure.
Right? But Bill Self is a great interview. Great interview.
I'm going to say two names without referencing what I'm answering, but I'll just say it was from a comment that was in there. Brock Lesnar and Bill Romanowski.
Romanowski, I've interviewed Romanowski. He's not home.
No, he's
not. Then you would love Jim McMahon because he ain't home.
No, I think the question was actually, who would you not interview if somebody paid you $1,000?
Oh, so it's who? Romanowski and who?
And Brock Lesnar.
Really, Lesnar was an ass?
We've had some run-ins.
Really?
Except
that's covering the MMA. You probably didn't like something you wrote.
No, he flinched at me one day to try because he didn't like a question and he flinched at me, and I was like, I didn't.
He acted like he was going to punch you.
Oh yeah. He gave me one of those, and I've said to this day, I was like, God damn, I wish he would have punched me. Oh my God, how great would that have been? He just knocks me cold. I wake up like the guy at the Steelers game. And I'm just like, wait, what just happened? Oh, I'm rich now. This is great. I wish he would have punched me. That would have been so awesome. God, I would have loved that.
Offer me $1,000. Who would I say no to? Guys that I won't interview that I ended up interviewing Marshall Faulk, but he was being such an ass. I'm like, dude, if you don't want to do this, don't do it. And I said that to Don Cheadle, too, at the American Century Championships.
Yeah.
Oh, and I talked to Don Cheadle. My wife actually was the occupational therapist for his aunt because he's from KCK. And I was like, yeah, my wife, it's like, and I was like, what was her name? And I was like, well, let me text my wife. I'll find out. And I was like, oh, yeah. He's like, yeah, I don't know her. And then let me look up. My wife sends me the thing like, no, this is it. And then she sent me something. I can't remember what it was. Like, no, that was his. I was saying, I was like, but I interviewed Don Cheadle because he's Don Cheadle for $1,000. It wasn't that bad,
Sure.
but he was just kind of an ass. And I was like,
Sure.
I go, Don, you don't have to do this interview if you don't want to do it. He goes, no, I'm here. I'm like, yeah, I know, but don't seem invested. And like if you don't want to do it, I can talk to other people.
You know what's really weird? That's what set Brock Lesnar off.
Is you told him hey, if you don't want to be here, don't be here.
That was because he kept giving one-word answers, and I was like, why are you even doing this?
Yeah.
What's the point of this?
Yeah.
And he's like, they told me I had to be here. And I was like, well, I'm not saying you have to be here. And he's like, I was like, okay.
To Cameron's point, Desmond Howard was awful. It was
really
so awful we made it comedic.
No, this is slander. I don't like this.
What do you mean? Because you like Michigan?
His Michigan attacks, I don't like.
Dude, I asked him. I go, a lot of left tackles in this draft. They brought him on because they were doing the college channel. ESPN offered him to us because they were doing the college channel of the draft. ABC was like him and Todd McShay, and so I'm talking to him, and you got 10 minutes with him, okay, and I'm like, a lot of left tackles because the Chiefs were in the market for a left tackle. I go, what do you think of left tackles? They're good. Like, okay. Like, is there a quarterback that stands out? Not really. I'm like, dude, is this kind of an analysis you're going to give on Thursday night for the draft? Like, this is dog shit, man.
It's terrible.
Like, we just got through it, and I'm like, okay, we got to make this comedic because we are going to bomb this afterward.
Wow.
So just stay the course and let's see where it goes. Yeah, that was a rough go.
I just realized it's like very late for you, so we'll get out of here. There was one thing you wanted to talk about that I want to bring up real quick as we leave. You apparently you were watching the Paralympic basketball,
dude.
Well, hold on. I will say this. I already know how good they are because we were out at the Air Force Base one day. One of our listeners is a very important person in the Air Force who is an awesome, awesome dude, and he had us out there for a charity event that they were doing, and somebody offered us to get in the chairs and like compete. Like, you get in there, you play against them, whatever. And I was like, no, definitely not. And the response was, oh, don't worry, you're not like, you're not. It's not unacceptable. Like, it's not rude to get in the chair. Like, you're not, it's not like you're pretending to be whatever. And I was like, no, it's not that. They are way too good. There's no way I'm going to get in there and get embarrassed by how much they destroy us. It's not going to happen. It had nothing to do with like, oh, I don't want to, diminish their handicap. No, that wasn't that. They were freaking awesome.
Oh, they would kick your ass.
Yes.
I had seen, little bits and snippets, but tonight the U.S. and Germany were playing, and in the Paralympics, which are on NBC Sports Network, and I love competition, right? And the Royals played today. And so I was looking for things to watch. I was watching the MLS All-Star game, which I don't know who won because the shootout, like getting ready for this, I paused the shootout between Liga MX and the MLS All-Stars. So nobody tell me. But I was watching that, and I was watching, and I was going through, and I'm like, oh my God, like the basketball game's on. I brought my daughter. I'm like, hey, honey, they're playing, wheelchair basketball. Come check it out. And we sat down, and it was awesome. I was fascinated because I'm like, okay, what's the rule on how far you can roll before you got to dribble again and all that?
I asked that question too.
I totally want to dig into how all that works, but like the cuts and the picks and the fouls, like when you foul and take a guy out and knock him over,
sure.
Like I was like, this shit is awesome.
Just the strength that they have to move the chairs.
Dude, the guys' upper bodies are like they look like football players more than basketball players. But then I heard at one point that like, he plays professionally overseas. Like, holy shit, there is professional leagues. That is so awesome. It wasn't just like, holy cow, man, I didn't realize how good these guys are. Like you're talking about. It went beyond as like, this is entertaining shit.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I watched the whole game. Like the rest of the way, I was like glued to it. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I love it. Number 9's the point guard for the U.S. team.
Okay.
And he's kicking it around and watching him. Like, I'm like, holy shit, he totally saw the floor just like a regular point guard. And he saw the cut coming off where the pick, he saw his buddy was coming up with to set a pick from the roll. That was going to clear this guy. And he brought the ball up and was ready to go and hit him right inside. And then their touch from sitting that low is amazing.
It's incredible. In the end, it's just basketball.
Yeah,
like it is. It's entertaining. It's great. It's fun to watch. So I'm glad that you saw it. Hopefully, some other people will check it out too. Brady, I'm not even going to acknowledge. There's no. No. The Little People Olympics. Stop it. Come on, man. I don't think there's a real thing. If there is, good for them. But we're not doing that right now.
Yeah, I'm sure the competition is
yes,
good.
Yes,
I'm with you. I support all.
Yes, whoever wants to play athletics, play the athletics. We're happy with that. And we'll see which of the quarterbacks is a bust and which is great. Get into that, I'm sure, more in the future. We have a fantasy draft to prepare for, so we're going to go. We have to start looking up some now that we can't get backups for the Rams because Sony Michel is there. That'll do it. But great stuff from you. People know where to find you. I think people know where to find me.
Yep.
You're here every Wednesday. Check us right out on Twitter and on radio, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
You're the man, Adam.
You too. By the way, I think we just have to leave because I think
we do.
Shut it off.
Yeah, because Steve has control, so we're all out.
All right,
hey, brother, love you.
Guys. See ya.